I don't judge that in your organization, anybody who's listening, or following along this organization, you have people that do sales and then you have people that actually deliver on your service or your product offering. When we transition from the sales conversation to the delivery or the execution conversation, lots of times we drop the baton. They feel connected, they feel consistency, they feel trust, they feel a bond, they feel a personal and emotional connection. You're delivering on what you promised. The typical customer will stay for 5 years.
All right, you beautiful motherfuckers. We have a living legend. I was actually talking to Joey about his book right here, and I feel like I have recommended this baby at least 1,000 times, and I will continue to recommend it 1,000 times more. A lot of you guys are familiar with some of the cool like creating wow experiences from my book, but just so you guys know, I'm not that smart. I just read well, and I got all these ideas from Joey, and he's really put together what I consider to be the most actionable book I've ever read on the subject of consistently creating great client experiences. So it's an honor and a blessing to have you here, dude, because you are doing so much for the retention and the horrible name that internet marketers have as a whole, and you're helping us change that. So thank you, my man. I know you have a crazy travel schedule and hasn't been your best feeling good kind of period, so we're stoked to have you.
Frankie, I am thrilled to be here. Thanks so much for the kind and generous intro. And I got to say, nothing makes me happier as an author than to have someone say, I read your book and I took action. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that's what I was hoping to create. And
Yeah.
hearing you say that that's the impact it has is just music to
Yeah.
my ears. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I can confirm that as double. A couple times a week I get somebody to message me and say, "Hey, I built this business up to here, and all I did was follow your book." And I'm like, "That's just amazing." I never get tired of those in the inbox. So, one of the, obviously, for those of you guys who've never read it, Joey lays out start to finish kind of the 8 stages of really like what I would consider the retention Bible of setting everything up so like clients come in the door happy. But let's talk about one of those big leverage points, which is cash is exchanged and now it's time to like actually deliver the work. And as you mentioned in your book, often this is a typical experience where people go, hey, I know you've been talking to the salesperson, but let's pass you over to a completely different team who knows nothing about you and all that. So I wonder if you could just share some insights on that onboarding process, a little bit about how you discovered and how to like kind of intentionally deliver that wow experience like systematically every single time all the time kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what is interesting to me is, and I want to be very clear, I don't judge that in your organization, anybody who's listening, or following along this organization, you have people that do sales and then you have people that actually deliver on your service or your product offering. I'm not opposed to handoffs. I'm opposed to dropping the baton during the handoff. What I
Yeah.
mean by that is if you've ever watched track and field at the Olympics or NCAA championships or, world track meets, that kind of thing. If a player in a relay race, a runner takes the baton and they hand it to the runner who they're handing off to, that they're going to take the race and run it forward. If in that baton handoff, the baton falls on the ground, the race is over for that team.
Yeah.
They don't get to stop and pick it up. You would think, oh, well, if they should stop and pick it up, yeah, they're slower and they're behind now, but
I'm
they'll
out.
catch
I
up.
gotta
No,
get the
yeah,
baton, you guys.
no, you're disqualified if you drop the baton. And the same holds true in our business. When we transition from the sales conversation to the delivery or the execution conversation, lots of times we drop the baton. And when we drop the baton, the customer will regularly say, I'm out, and they'll disqualify us and they'll quit.
Yeah.
But even if they don't say that, they'll feel that.
Yeah.
And the likelihood of them continuing to do business within the future goes down dramatically because of how we handed the transition from one part of the team to the other. I believe there are 8 phases that every customer has the potential to go through. And I outline all of these in the book, kind of taking someone from the first time they hear about your product or your service offerings to the point where they're a raving fan zealot singing your praises and saying how amazing you are. The problem is most organizations try to jump from, hey, this is what we do, to be a great raving fan of ours and tell all of your friends, without acknowledging all the subsequent phases that happen
Yeah.
between those 2 steps.
Yeah, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the psychology, because this was big for me to really understand the whole right when the money is exchanged, especially if we're talking what represents a sizable purchase to that person. Like buyer's remorse is the most automatic reaction in the world. And essentially, like if you could give a voice to that, it's like I'm gonna look stupid and I'm gonna have to tell somebody else, like, oh, I got ripped off in our case by another marketer. I know you've taught this, well beyond just our industry borders, but in our world, it's usually like, oh, I got ripped off by another asshole marketer. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. Ha ha ha. And that's the voice they feel. And so one of the things that you really kind of taught me in your materials is really the idea, what I call welcome aboard, is that even before you get to, hey, give me your passwords, give me your login so I can get to work, there's a phase of just like rewarding them for, hey, you're really smart. We're honored to have you. You're like a welcome guest in the family. And everybody on the team's so excited to have you, and creating that welcome. And I noticed I've done a lot of work in the legal space. Like all the top law firms do this. They have an orchestrated welcome. Like they're not leaving it to chance. Like I can remember one law firm, they uh they would have a gift basket with a hand signed letter from the team. And it sounds like a lot of work, but what they would do is they would put 100 letters on each person's desk, and they would sign them all, and each person would sign them, and they would pass them around the office. And then when Joey signs up, all they got to do is say, welcome, Joey. And it looks like the whole team sat there and posed and wrote for you. And it has a very profound effective, like you feel like, hey, I just made a good decision, right? Like, and this translates. I wonder if you could talk just about how like kind of nailing those details translates to what most people in our world want, which is, this stuff recurring, because people feel like, hey, they're in good hands, like which you almost can't, you can't replicate that in a way.
You can't, but here's the interesting thing, Frankie. I think there are two key components to what you talked about there. You talked about buyer's remorse, and you talked about strategic ways to think about systemizing caring. Let me look at each of those independently.
Yeah.
So, what do we know about buyer's remorse? Well, we've all probably heard the phrase buyer's remorse. We've all felt the feelings of buyer's remorse,
Yeah.
but the average person doesn't understand the scientific reality that is buyer's remorse. So, at the risk of diving too deep into the science, brain science tells us when we make a purchase, we decide to sign up to work with a certain marketing agency, we buy a product at the grocery store, we order something online, doesn't matter. Anytime that there is a financial transaction, we make a purchase, our brain floods with dopamine. We feel joy, euphoria, and excitement. This is the agency that's going to be the answer to my prayers. These are the folks that are going to be able to get me more clients. These are the folks that are going to increase my reach. But almost as quickly as that dopamine floods the brain, it starts to recede. And as it recedes, the clock ticks faster and faster. And those feelings of joy, euphoria, and excitement start to be replaced by feelings of fear and doubt and uncertainty. What if this doesn't work out? What if they take my monthly retainer and it doesn't produce more leads? What if we run the campaign and it doesn't move the dial? What if we actually lose money on this project instead of making money on this project? Yeah. What if my boss says, why did you hire these people? What if my spouse says, you're an idiot? I can't believe you're on the verge of losing your job for choosing to work with this agency.
Yeah.
All those feelings we know are scientifically going to happen with every purchase. And we also know from the research that the higher the price of the item, the higher the ticket value.
Yeah, the bigger,
the greater the buyer's remorse.
Yeah, exactly.
So everybody who's like, oh, let's go for the whale clients, let's have platinum level service, let's make sure we just get the big ones we work with, you're actually stacking the buyer's remorse even higher. Yeah. So the question then becomes, Frankie, well, what do we do about this? Well, it's actually quite simple. In my 8-phase process, this is the affirm phase. And it's called the affirm phase because when someone's in buyer's remorse, you need to affirm their decision to work with you. You need to remind their brain that they went through a process to decide to hire you or to employ you or to work with you, and that thought process was wise, was logical, and was thoughtful. Yeah. So you can just say, to your point, oh, thank you so much for selecting us. We know you have a lot of options when it comes to law firms, like your law firm example, but we appreciate you working with ours. The entire team is excited to work with you. And then you've got the card signed by everybody, and you're giving them a basket with some goodies and some snacks so they get a little sugar rush to go with the dopamine rush, and they're feeling good about it. What I really liked about the example you gave is often the pushback I get, especially from businesses that are doing a high volume, is Joey, we can't do these little personal touches at scale. That was really nice when we had 2 clients, but now we're signing 20 clients a day or 20 clients an hour or whatever it may be. And there's no way for us to deliver on this level of personalization and care. I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement.
I do.
There yeah, it is absolutely possible to scale caring. You just need to be strategic about it. You want to do handwritten notes? Have everybody signed 100 handwritten notes, and now you've got a library of 100 that you just need to put their name on.
Yeah.
You want to do a custom video? You can use AI to drop in the names of the recipients. So
Yeah.
I've got a client that they did a thing where they shot the video, and in the beginning, it just shows their logo, and it's like, hey, guess what? We've got a special thing for you, Frankie. And then the logo zooms out and it's got the person and says, and that special thing is me saying, we are so excited to work with you. Well, they put the voiceover in and they can drop any name they want in the voiceover. But then when it cuts to the person that's talking, it's them actually talking to the screen. Yeah. There's so many possibilities. There are so many capabilities for involving technology to create these personal and emotional connections with your clients. It really shouldn't be an excuse anymore.
Yeah. And, I'll tell you, one of the things that I love is that you chunk it down to this whole process to 100 days. And we all know, obviously, like, if you're doing this process right, you're creating like essentially clients for life. But I wonder if you could speak to like why the first 100 days is so important and how like those first impressions are essentially formed in the beginning. And if they go the wrong way, they're almost impossible to undo. And if you kind of over deliver and exceed those expectations, which are so rare in business these days, it really just sets you up as to be that, like you said, the raving fans who want to refer you and tell everybody about you. But I wonder how you could just speak to how you decided on that little like kind of 100-day window and how it's a very doable kind of process.
Yeah, what's really interesting, Frankie, is while I'm flattered to think that folks would be like, "Oh, Joey, first 100 days, it's catchy, it sounds good, do," it's what the research showed. I looked at businesses, small, medium, and large, online and offline, businesses that sold products and businesses that sold services, folks that were operating domestically, folks that were operating internationally. And in doing all the research for my book, Never Lose a Customer Again, we looked at hundreds, if not thousands, of different industries and businesses. And what we found is across all of them, somewhere between 20 and 70% of new customers will quit before the 100-day anniversary.
That's wild.
In banking, it was 32%. In banking,
Yeah.
banking for God's sakes, which is like considered to be one of the most conservative. Once you're in, you stay in. Most people aren't jumping into new banks every week. Oh my God, unbelievably difficult to switch. Cell phones, known as having the most draconian contracts in the consumer space, 21% quit in their cell phone contract in the first 100 days. Software as a service across all industries, 20%. Auto mechanics, 68%. Restaurants, 40 to 70%, depending on the type of cuisine you offer. So the data was coming in from everywhere that there was this huge issue. But you know what was scarier to me, Frankie? Excuse me, than the 20 to 70% of people that were quitting in the first 100 days? It was that the typical business owner had no idea what their percentage was.
Yeah.
They had no idea how many people were leaving. And more importantly, they had no understanding or appreciation of how quickly those people were leaving. And here's the other piece they found. The research shows that if on day 101, the customer is feeling ecstatic about the relationship, they feel connected, they feel consistency, they feel trust, they feel a bond, they feel a personal and emotional connection, you're delivering on what you promised, the typical customer will stay for 5 years.
Yeah.
That's how important these first 100 days are. It's not just Joey's opinion. This is what the research shows.
Yeah. You make it through 3 months. And for you guys, for selfish reasons, I want you to understand what Joey is saying is if you can make it through those first 3 months and deliver a wow experience, that client is likely to still be paying you 5 years later. And I want you to think about all the clients over the years that have left, after a month, 2 months, and didn't stay long enough to really see the benefits. Imagine all of those people were still paying you today. And, as one of the things you talked about, like one of the simplest, most obvious ways this benefits you is it makes a business more sellable, right? Like if you
Not
have,
only does it make a business more sellable, it makes a business more fun. It
yeah.
makes a business more profitable. Research out of Harvard Business School, Stanford Business School, and Frederick Reichheld, the gentleman who created Net Promoter Score that many of the listeners are familiar with, your NPS score, shows that a 5% reduction in customers leaving will increase your profits, not your revenues, your profits 25 to 100%.
Yeah.
Now, some people are listening. They're like, Joey, I was told there would be no math during this episode and conversation today. This is ridiculous. Let me break down the math for you. And you just gave a perfect example of it, Frankie. In the first month, 2 months, 3 months that you're working with a new client, you're not really making money. You've got your recouping of your marketing and your sales cost. You're getting them up to speed. You're getting the system set up. It's very time intensive. It's process intensive. You're trying to get everybody bought in. It's a lot more difficult to work with a client in month 3 than it is in month 33. In month 33, you've got a cadence, you've got a flow. And so what the research shows is every additional dollar spent becomes more profitable the longer the relationship goes, because
Yeah.
we've recouped the startup costs, the marketing costs, the sales costs, the admin costs, the setup costs. All those things have been covered. And as you know, when we've been working with a client for months or years or even a decade, we start to have a shorthand where we understand what they're asking. They say, oh, I'd like something that does XYZ. And we're like, great. And we put it together and we give it back and there's no revisions. We hit it on the first try. We're exactly on. So we become more efficient, more effective, and more productive the longer we're in relationship.
Yeah, 1,000%. One of the things that I actually wanted to talk about as well, like you've got some great advice for almost like I call it the lull, the phase where I forget what you named it, but now like all the initial high is worn off, you're actually doing the work, and some great advice on over communicating. And I actually wrote an example in my book that I think kind of illustrates this. Where I live in Mexico, it's kind of like an affluent area where it's like we either have rich Mexican neighbors or like retired like old Americans. It's a 50-50 mix of that. And I remember one of the neighbors just finished building a house, and I went to him and I said, like, just making small talk about his house. And I said, how was it? And he said, it was the worst fucking experience of my life. And I said, why? Right. And he said, well, essentially he sent his life savings to a stranger in Mexico, and then he didn't hear anything for 6 months. He eventually got like a piece of paper in the mail, and it was like too technical and he couldn't translate it. And I said, how did the process end? And he said, oh, I drove down and the house was built perfectly, right? Like the deliverable was 100% out of 100, and yet it was the worst experience of his life because he was left in the dark, wondering the entire time if he had just wired his life savings to a stranger that he would never see again. And one of the things that you showed me is like, I kind of described the process. Imagine that same company said, hey, here's a little video of the team. We're super excited to have you. I know it doesn't look like much, but this piece of ground is yours, and we are going to be building here. And then a week later, they say, here's the foundation. We put in the foundation. I know it still doesn't look like much, but we're getting there. And then they put up a frame and say, Carlos over here, we're probably 2 days behind, but just to let you know, we're making up for it. And he was informed through that whole process, almost over communicated with. He would feel like totally comfortable and at ease. And ironically, he could probably end up with a worse house, an 80% as nice house, and still be, more happy and fulfilled with the process. And I remember when I first read what you were writing about that, like light bulbs went off, and realizing you have to inform people before they even ask. Otherwise, they just end up thinking like, I sent my life savings to a stranger and I got screwed.
Frankie, 100%. Let's talk about 3 things quickly: contracts, consistency, and colorful images. Contracts. I know all of you have contracts that you send to your clients, and you outline timelines, and you outline deliverables, and you outline the steps in your process. And first, we're going to meet with you, and we're going to talk about the scope, and then we're going to get creative, and we're going to come with you with some campaign ideas, and then you're going to choose one, and then we're going to start to run it, and then we're going to test it a little more, and A/B split, and all these things. They don't read the contract.
I know.
Your clients don't read the contract. You work so hard creating the contract. They don't read the contract. Yeah. And you know what? They also don't go back to the contract unless there's a problem. Yeah. So you think everybody's on the same page. You're not even on the same page when you start. Yeah. So that's contracts. Number 2, consistency. The secret here is to consistently hold their hand. to consistently be able to go to any one of your clients and say, where are we right now in our process? What did we do right before this? And what are we going to do right after this? If you are doing your job well, I could call any one of your clients and say, what is the next communication you're going to have from Frankie and his team? And they would say, it's going to be an update on the spring campaign. It's going to be the revised version of XYZ. They will know what's coming next because you consistently remind them where they are and what comes next. Last, colorful images. All too often, we think that an update is best if it's just a quick little email with 3 sentences, or let me send you a text, blah, blah, blah. We're doing text-based communications instead of colorful image communications. Yeah. I like to give clients a map. Here's the picture. Here's where we are right now. We're going to climb this mountain together. Right now, we're at base camp. Oh, we're halfway up the mountain. Oh, we're right near the peak. Oh, now we're descending the mountain, so that they have a visual image that we can reference collaboratively about where they are in the process and what's going on. If you think about contracts, if you think about consistency, if you think about using colorful images, you eliminate 99% of the angst and you avoid customers getting exactly what you promised, the house delivered, built perfectly, but feeling angst and frustration about how they got from the beginning to the end, even if the end is exactly the result they wanted.
Yeah, just another example to illustrate your point. One of my mentors in the legal space, he did a branch of law called Social Security Disability. And one of the things that happens is when you do that process, you initially file some documents at the courthouse, and then it takes 9 months to a year to actually get a court case. And so what happens is once they file the documents, there's a 9 to 12 month waiting period. And so they found every time they would try and update people, there was just confusion, and people were going like, what are you guys doing? Like, what the hell is the holdup? And not realizing it's not them holding it up. It's just the bureaucratic.
It's the legal system. This is the way it works. Yeah.
And so, one of the things they did is they created an infographic that shows this 9 to 12 month waiting period. And every single month they would send an update and say, hey, there's no update only because we're waiting for our court date. But when we get it, we're going to move fast. But just so you know, and they could always reference that visual picture. And as soon as they did that, like 95% of the client complaints like dropped off a cliff like virtually overnight, because they could see the map and go, okay, I get why we have to wait 9-12 months for a court date. You guys aren't just sitting there thumbs up your asses kind of thing. Joey, I want to be super respectful of your time. I know we got you only for 2 more minutes. For those of you guys who are in the small minority who have not heard of this man and his life-changing work, for you guys, like tell us where we can get more. Obviously, I'm going to plug this baby, but I know you got other good stuff. Let's hear it.
So I've written 2 books. The first one's called Never Lose a Customer Again. The second one's called Never Lose an Employee Again. You can find these books wherever you like to get your books. If you like hardcover books, we've got a hardcover version. If you like to read it on your Kindle or your e-reader, there's an electronic book version. If you've liked the sound of my voice in our conversation today, you can get the audiobook, which I narrate. So the book's available wherever you like to get books, indie bookstore, Amazon, everything in between, whatever you like, you can find it there. The other place I would direct folks is to find me on LinkedIn or find me at my website, joeycoleman.com. That's Joey, like a baby kangaroo or
I'll put some links for folks.
Coleman, Coleman, joeycoleman.com. There you'll find videos, you'll find more information about keeping your customers, keeping your employees, all sorts of stuff that will hopefully help you. And the last thing I'll say is when you go to the website, there's an implementation kit. If you want to start to put these things into process, just enter your email. You can download the implementation kit so you can start keeping more of your customers, not only in the first 100 days, but for many years beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, as a testament to Joey's work, our oldest client has been with us now, like, I don't know, like 2009. How long is that? 15 years. And I never would have been able to do that had I not come across this little magic piece here. So we really appreciate you coming in here and doing this. And I will put some links for you guys below who are interested in checking that out. I think we may have just lost Joey anyway. Hey guys, if you like this video, you'll also like my book on Amazon called Beyond the Agency Box, which you can also find by my name, Frankie Finn, and it's got a lot of awesome reviews, and it really just goes deeper on a lot of things we're talking about, everything you need to grow and start a lifestyle agency, from the stages you'll go through to getting clients, to how to create winning offers, to high value deliverables, to wowing clients,
to building teams, to building systems, and building a boring factory that's like a 7-figure money machine for you. So if you're interested, I put links for you in the video description, as well as it'll be in the pinned top comment below, and make sure to check those out.